enjoy the presentation, and it is now my absolute pleasure to hand over to Wendy and Paul.
Thank you, Sophie, and welcome everyone to our session. So I'm Paul. I'm a clean language certified trainer and assessor. I've been using clean for almost 10 years. A long time that was in business context, so executive coaching, and I used to lead agile teams. But now I integrate clean with embodiment and bodywork practices, as well as training clean. I do a lot of work with women who are reconnecting to their bodies, particularly after sexual trauma or difficult relationships.
And I'm Wendy. I'm an NLP trainer, and I've been training clean language for about 21 years. I use clean and NLP when I'm coaching or psychotheraping, and when I occasionally work with teams or do a market research project where clean language interviewing is really helpful for getting to the truth of the interviewees. I co-wrote Clean Language, Revealing Metaphors and Opening Minds with Judy Rees quite a long time ago, and it's sold more than 22,000 copies now. It's been translated into 3 other languages. We would never have guessed this would happen. And I recently contributed to an academic book on clean language interviewing. So enough about me. I'd like to introduce our assistants to you. We've got 7 people from our Clean Change community, learning community, who've very kindly agreed to join us to support everyone through this session. They are amazing in many ways and have extraordinary range of skills available to them as well. They all have clean language skills and are still learning more in that field. And we have people with varying levels of NLP knowledge, from not much at all the way through to an NLP master trainer. So some of our assistants may not recognize NLP terminology, but boy, do they make up for that in a whole range of other relevant skills. We have people who are experts in all of the 4 approaches that we are focusing on today. And between us, the training team works with individuals, groups, teams. You have people who train, coach, counsel, therapy, and work as consultants. We have someone with a PhD and someone starting a PhD. We have authors, equine assisted learning experts, plural, body workers, an internal family systems trainer, an artist, a hypnotherapist, people with skills in constellations, family systems, and focusing. And that isn't all, but I'll stop there. So if we could tell you who our assistants are, we have Alison. If could we have everyone available to be seen so that Alison can do away? Excellent. There's Alison. And Claire. Where's Claire gone? There she is. And Hans Peter. Okay. And Lisa. Excellent. And Lorraine. There she is. And Lucas. Okay. And Melanie. Excellent. So let's find out a tiny bit about the people in the group. Could we have you do a little wave if you've done a lot of NLP training?
Can we get the gallery view?
I will need gallery. Well, hey,
Right, there we go. Super now.
people with lots of NLP training, give us a wave. Excellent. And people with some NLP training? Okay. People who've got some clean training? Excellent. And anyone who's been to any of our sessions before? Excellent. I did recognize that we had a couple of people who looked familiar. That's brilliant. Excellent. Well, what's great is today's session will work for everyone. We've put together a scripted process so that you don't require any prior knowledge. And so all the mix of skills will work well. Let's start with a brief introduction to explain why we're doing what we're doing. As coaches and therapists and the likes, we all want to be effective. And a common path is that you learn an approach like NLP, and then you start on a path of professional development, and you add more tools to your toolkit to expand on what you know how to do and who you can work with. After a while, the toolkit starts getting full, and it can be a real challenge to work out what tool to use and when. However, there's a way to coach at a deeper level that flexes to suit the client, taps into their innate abilities, and is completely joined up. It's elegant, and it's how some of the best coaches intuitively work. We wanted to create a way to give you a taste of that today, no matter at what level you currently work. And as Paul and I explored using clean language at deeper levels, we've come to the conclusion there are at least 4 ways that people understand and reason and make sense and make change in the world. And these seem to be universal and fundamental to how we are as human beings. And you can see them on the screen now. So they are somatic, the yellow one, bottom right, about how we take in information from inside and outside our bodies and create experience and meaning. So to do with the felt sense. And then we have space and spatial, how we use the sense of where things are and their relationship to each other. So working with and moving in space is involved. And then we've got metaphor and symbols and symbolic, which is about how we understand complex things in terms of other more simple, concrete experiences. And finally, we've got social systems, which is about how we relate to other intelligent entities in the world. So it can be both working with a number of people, or it can be working with inner parts of a person. And it's possible for clients to achieve life-changing results using just one of these 4 systems. And when you can flex between all 4 and even blend them, so the client has several or maybe all the systems in action simultaneously, something magical that we're referring to as psychoactivity is still more likely to happen. So let's say a tiny bit about psychoactivity. The word's typically used when talking about psychoactive substances or drugs. It refers to a drug or another substance that affects how the brain works and causes changes in mood, awareness, thoughts, feelings, or behaviors. Some examples of psychoactive substances include alcohol and caffeine and nicotine, marijuana, etc. So we're using the word in the way that David Grove, who invented clean language, and Penny Tompkins and James Lawley, who vastly worked in the field and who are doing the masterclass at the conference in May. We're using psychoactivity in the way that they use it to refer to the kind of effects that a client can experience when working in the ways that we're going to explore today. There are no drugs or other substances involved in this. The effects that we're meaning are where the client's inner world becomes more real to them than their outer everyday world. And it's as though stuff starts transforming and evolving of its own accord without the client trying to make change happen. And in this state, powerful self-generated change becomes much more possible. So today we're going to give you short little taster activities for some of the four approaches, just so you have a taste of them. And then we're going to dive into an integrated process that uses all four of the approaches.
Okay, so we're going to start with the first of our S's, and then our first activity will explore the somatic. So one of the most basic facts is that we have a body, and we have ways of knowing what's happening inside and outside the body, and ways of affecting change, such as moving the body. And our bodies learn memories, such as through stimulus response. And at the most fundamental level, that's been in our DNA for over 1 billion years. So this is a really fundamental way of knowing and learning in the world. So the memories that are formed are usually resourceful memories, but they can also be incorrect models of the world. So working with the body is becoming more widely considered as important in coaching and therapy. But what's interesting is quite often the focus is more on fixing incorrect models. But in our training, we're focusing both on that, but we also have a really great interest in making use of the body resources, of what it is the body's learned that actually is very resourceful and useful to someone. We're going to introduce you to this with a little activity that will facilitate from the front. It's something if you don't want to take part in, that's fine. You can just listen along. And what we're going to do is invite you to remember an experience, and we're going to choose the experience, and that's not a clean thing to do. Normally it would be an experience you've chosen yourself, but this is the only way we can do this from the front. But it's one we think you will have all had, and we strongly suggest you choose a version of this that you like. So the experience is one of relaxing outside with the pleasurable warmth of the sun on your skin. So this may have happened several times. So pick something that matches that you like or is close enough. And you might like to start just by getting yourself how you'd like to be. So what I'm going to do is ask a few questions. You don't have to, you won't answer them out loud. You can just let the questions land in you. So find a place you'd like to be to do this. Maybe you'd like to be leaning back, or you can even go and lie down or something for this. It's fine to turn your cameras off if you want to. And also you can do this with your eyes closed, your eyes open, however you'd like to do this. Okay. If you're ready. And relaxing outside with the pleasurable warmth of the sun on your skin. And as you're relaxing outside with the pleasurable warmth of the sun on your skin, is there anything else about that warmth? And is there anything else about that warmth on your skin? And your body relaxing. And whereabouts is that relaxing? And is there anything else about that relaxing? And relaxing and warm sun on your skin. And is there anything else about all that?
And if you'd like to come back to the room, and could we have gallery view, please? And what we'd like to ask everyone is, as you were doing that activity, assuming you were doing that activity, you started to actually feel the experience. You wave a hand if you experienced some warmth, etc. Okay, right. So we got a fair number of hands. Would you put in the Hoover chat just a tiny comment about your experience, about what you learned? What was it that you felt if you started to have the experience of it being a real thing, that you were relaxing outside in the sun? This is where we want to find out whether we can use Hoover chat going forwards in this session. Okay.
It's nice when we've got a large number of people. This is a way, as a group, we can all just get a sense of what happened for all of us. We do normally like talking to people if we can, but it's a larger amount of people today.
A sense of warmth inside my body as well as outside. Well, if you're anywhere near sort of area I'm in, there's not a lot of stray warmth to be had in the real world. So I think we can take it that was probably a psychoactive experience. The experience of mind quieting and feeling fully present to the body. And got the sun on my back and then moved to my face. Again, fresh little sun around here to do any moving about one's body. Okay, anyone who had a relatively strong experience of this, of being in the sun, that would like to maybe just tell us a sentence or two, actual talking. If you wave your hand, then we have an excellent steward who will unmute you. No? Okay. So let's say a word or two about it. The fact that quite a few people were waving their hand to say yes, they had this sense of it being a real experience is pretty good going, I think, because the activity lasted 2 minutes. So it's not as though you'd had a lot of time in order to kind of get into the experience. It was 2 minutes. Paul asked only 2 different questions. He repeated one of them several times, so he asked 5 questions in all. And so to then be able to start having a sense of what happens when you really are in the sun and relaxing outside is pretty extraordinary. And this is an experience of what we are calling psychoactivity. And if you can set up the way that you're working with clients so that they start to have an equivalent kind of experience as you're working with them, things are going to be much more memorable and valuable to them. And that's what we're keen on having happen.
So this is one of our S's, it's systematic. So just to give you a sense of when you might use this kind of approach, obviously that was just a very taster exercise. You could use it to help your client explore, and it might be perhaps a resourceful state that they've had, like if they wanted to be more motivated, that state that's relevant to their outcome. So if they want to be more motivated, you could help them to explore what that's like in the body, and particularly if you notice it happening live as in the session in some way, then you can use these kind of questions to help them explore the state more, to kind of like deepen it, to become conscious and aware of it, to be able to access it more in the future. And there's some research from Eugene Gendlin, who looked at lots of different psychotherapy and what made a difference to clients. And what he found was when it wasn't anything to do with the therapist, it was to do with the client. When the client had a felt sense, so in other words, they're aware of what's happening kind of in their body primarily, that's what makes the difference for long-lasting change to occur. So the somatic, working with the body, is an incredibly important part of what we do. We're going to move on to a second one of our S's now and give you a taster of that. It's another fundamental way of understanding the world, and it's space. So we have the ability to know where things are in space. For example, where's the food? Where's the safe cave? How far away is the saber-toothed tiger? So these are all fundamental to our survival. Like these are wired into our brains at a basic level. So there's like specific brain neurons that fire in response to spatial information. And when things are arranged in space, then often our system can know and reason differently about a situation because we're taking advantage of that kind of fundamental capability to reason about space in the world. I mean, those of you in business have probably done very simple versions of this with like post-it notes on a wall or a whiteboard, and organizing them makes use of space. And NLP makes use of it in various processes. For example, the SCORE process, where there's a sheet of paper put on the ground for S, symptoms, C, the causes, O, the outcomes, R, the resources, and E, the effects. And then as the client moves between them, they learn more by doing that. So putting things out in space like this makes working on an outcome much easier than when just you're kind of holding all the information in your head. So we're going to do a little taster activity. Wendy's going to lead us through.
So what we are going to do is a really tiny little activity, and you're going to need a desired outcome to reflect on. You're not going to tell anyone about that content, and it is tiny. So quick as a flash, come up with a desired outcome that you can use. And here's what you're going to do with it. I'm going to ask you to physically get up and go to a really good space in your room for you to be a client. So a good being a client space in your room. You may need to try out a couple of spaces to decide on a really good one. And when you have decided, stay there and reflect on your desired outcome for about 20 or 30 seconds and notice the quality of your reflecting. Then find the worst place or a really not great place in your room for you to be a client and stay there for about 20 seconds, reflecting on your desired outcome and notice the quality of your experience there. You're not limited to sitting on a chair for this. You could stand or lie down, face up or face down, go in a corner with your nose jammed in, stand on a chair if it's safe, or anything else. So off you go and be back in 1.5 minutes. Okay. So let's find out how that was for everyone. Again, if we could have gallery view and just get a quick sense. Did anyone have the same space for both the best place and the worst place to be facilitated? If you did, give us a wave. No, I rather thought not. Who found that their system fairly readily got a sense of some spaces that might be more helpful or less helpful than others? You have a wave? Yep, okay, quite a lot of waves. And this is, I think, consistent with what David Groves said about how if you make use of space, it becomes your co-facilitator. It makes everything easier in all sorts of surprising ways. So again, would you, if you had an experience of something unusual, synchronicity-ish, or the likes, would you maybe write a little comment in Hoover or wave a hand and we can ask you live? And give you an example of the sort of thing that I mean. There is a client busy working on trying to find the strength to move on with their desired outcome. And they noticed workers pulling not one, but 2 no stopping signs out of a fountain pond that they were busy clearing out. This was while they were busy working as a client to find a way to soldier on with their outcome, which clearly needed lots of strength. But on seeing 2 no stopping signs, one after another in quick succession, they quickly came to the conclusion that it was now time to stop messing around and get on with their desired outcome. So did anyone have an odd kind of happening vaguely along those lines or along any other lines with that activity? Be fun if we could hear.
We've just got a comment in the chat about going to the best place. Immediately thought of a place space that would help me fulfill my outcome.
Nice. this is the sort of thing that starts to happen if you use space. I mean, it almost feels like cheating because it can make things so much easier. Interesting, Wendy, you saying that you wish you could have done the activity the other way around. So the not good space and then the good space. It's interesting. It's again one of these things that I think some individuals can have a different preference for. We did think about it, and our concern with doing it the other way is that you might land up with someone in a more unresourceful state before they went to the good place, and that might tarnish the experience of the good place. But it's something that we could do with testing out another time.
Yeah, although Helen was very innovative, and I don't think it's cheating, Helen, by the way. I think this is innovation and doing what's right for the client, because she went back to the good space again before sitting down.
Oh, neat.
So very good. I like that.
Well, and it's particularly nice because this is the sort of thing that starts happening when things get psychoactive. You have clients starting to disregard you and your good questions and just taking over the process. So kind of, no, I'm supposed to go and sit down. No, I'm not going to. What's right for me is to go back to the good space. So that's what I'm going to do. And, you know, it can be discombobulating for the facilitator when that first happens. But once you realize that this is a sign that the client's totally engaged in their own processing and that things are alive and happening, it's a complete delight. And all you need to do is sit there and keep track so that you've got a question available to ask them if that kind of comes to a halt and they turn to look at you. So really nice examples of psychoactive stuff.
Yes. And Alison said she was in a practice group as a coach, client, and observer, and the session didn't go as well as she didn't switch mentally between coach and coachee. And this exercise has reminded her that changing positions helps to remind the mind to leave behind the role that she'd just done previously. I think that's a really insightful comment about how space can work. It's really not obvious until you actually try it yourself and you realize you've moved to a different space, and what you can access in mentally changes, your state changes, your body can change. And until you experience it, it just seems a little bit unbelievable, but that is what happens when you move around in space and use it the way we've been showing you today.
I had it happen for me at an NLP practice group when I was quite early on in learning, where the presenter told us to go to the other end of the room. We're doing something with different perspectives. Told us go to the other end of the room and stand on a chair and look at our other positions. And I remember thinking what a ridiculous waste of time that was. And, what were they thinking of to make us do this? But I got on and I did it anyway. And I was astonished by the different knowings that I had standing on the chair at the other end of the room. So no more cynicalness from me on that subject.
Hey, so little taster of space and why that's a really important thing that we can use in our coaching, therapy, or whatever else it is we do. So when might you use space? Well, actually in every session, we have a thing in Clean that's start sessions with inviting clients to find the space that's good for them. So where would they like to be? Actually, where would they like us as a facilitator to be? So even if you simply invite the client to find a space that's good for them, as just like you did now in that taster, that's probably setting up the whole session to be more effective than it might have otherwise been. You'll know some NLP processes that use space. We mentioned SCORE. You've got perceptual positions as well. And making sure you allow the client to choose the spaces. It's quite tempting to just put your letters down in a line right in front of you. But if the client takes a moment to find, well, what's a good place for that S to be or that C to be, that can really make a difference to those kind of processes. And although people quite often know about clean language, it's a bit less known that we have processes based on space as well, like clean space, and they deliberately use these kind of qualities of space to help clients know more about themselves and their problems and outcomes and make changes. So that's our taster for space. We're going to move on quickly and get to the third of our S's. Actually, sorry, Lisa mentioned neurological levels works well done in space as well. That's a very good point. Thanks, Lisa. So we're going to move on to now the third of our S's, third fundamental way of understanding the world, which is metaphor and symbols. So how do we, not just individually, how does we as a species, as we're evolving, start to understand an increasingly complex world? So evolution and the brain seems to be very good at reusing what's already there. And there's a prevailing view that humans understand the complexities of the world by using more real world, easier to understand experiences as metaphors for the more complex ones. So basically, we understand one kind of thing in terms of another, particularly in terms of experiences. So examples of what we mean by metaphor in just everyday language, we might talk about having butterflies in our stomach. Now, we don't literally have some butterflies in there, but it gives a description of the kind of feeling. We might talk about standing up. I'm going to stand up for myself. Again, might not actually literally do that, but it's a metaphor for understanding what it is you're going to do kind of internally or in your behaviours through, in this case, a bodily experience. So notice how that overlaps with the somatic. You might talk about being in seventh heaven or being over the moon. So these are all metaphors for complex inner states. So an example, because particularly in clean, we do a lot of helping clients to understand, develop their own metaphors for things. A really useful one is safety, particularly if you do some therapy, for someone having a sense of what safety is for them. And for example, it might be like being in a log cabin and the wind and snow are blowing outside. I'm inside the strong walls, feeling the fire warming my face, holding a hot cocoa in my hands. And actually that is understanding what safety might be like for someone, but in terms of a metaphor as if it's something else. And you might notice in that, not only is there things like imagery, you might have sound potentially in that for someone, but we've also got the bodies involved as well. So things like the warmth and the cold. The metaphor can act as a bridge between conscious and unconscious mind. So things that might be difficult for us to really know what they are, like what is safety. We can form into a metaphor, and then as a client, we can know more, reason about it, change things that we couldn't otherwise consciously access. And what we're doing clean as well by using metaphor, and instead of working on making a change, trying to make a change, and by keeping to conceptual thinking, by going into metaphor, we enable our systems to make use of the logic of the metaphor. So it's far more colourful, easy to understand, and it enables a much more creative approach to making a change. So we're going to have a little taster of using metaphors.
Okay, and Paul is putting an image on the screen as we speak, and images rather. And what we are going to ask you is there an image here that can represent your answer to when you're learning really well, it's like what? If there isn't an image that's good for you to represent when you're learning really well, then you can draw your own image. You're not going to show it to anyone. It doesn't need to be a work of art. And when you found that image, we're going to ask you to also find an image that represents when you are not learning really well at all. And we'll give you a minute, maybe half a minute now, for you to choose those two images. So one for when you're learning really well, and another one to represent when you're not learning really well at all. Okay, so about your learning really well image, is there anything else about it? Just answer to yourself. And is there anything else about it? And anything else? And when you're learning like that, what happens for you? And now something changes, and you have to learn like that other image where you're not learning very well. What happens for you now? Okay, so will you put in the chat a little comment about your experience and what you learned from doing that tiny activity? Oh, we've got people who are cheating full on in this session. Fiona, I brought my learnings with me to help and support me on the second one. It's just fantastic. That's, again, I think it makes the point that when things start getting psychoactive, new options and ways forward occur to one in very easy and simple and natural ways that absolutely, definitely make life easier for someone who's wanting to work on a change.
We've got some comments that didn't want to look at the second image. The first one uplifted me, the second one made me feel anxious, but also that it would not defeat me. So you can notice, I think probably everyone here has got some serious resources. So it's not like we're necessarily going to be floored by not being able to learn very well, but we are going to have to bring some resources to bear on it in some way. Made me feel useless. When I looked at the second image, I felt sick. Another body thing there. Realised the importance of being in the best state to learn. What might happen if I'm not? And the first image meant everything was becoming clear and dropping into place. But the second one, it all seemed disjointed and didn't make sense. But then suddenly I saw something in the picture that started to have some meaning after all.
Fantastic. You can, I hope you can see how just kind of engaging with things in a more symbolic kind of way can immediately open up a whole lot more possibilities and potentially resources that, again, in next to no time at all, you can start to kind of put on my metaphor. It doesn't have to be yours. and get a sense of in a way that is completely different from thinking about something conceptually or straight rationally. And again, the kind of message coming through from the comments about, yes, well, I'll just do this, or oh, well, I can maneuver things in that way. I think again is suggestive of things being taking off and becoming psychoactive for people.
Yeah. We had one last comment about second image was a good awareness of what not to focus on when looking to learn. So I'm just going to say, because we would like you to all learn very well, if you'd like to take a few moments just to reconsider the image that was you learning very well, and just bring that one back to mind for the rest of the session. That would be a good idea. I don't want to leave you in the not learning well state. So let's give you a second for that. Okay. So take that back. And again, a quick taste of why metaphor is important and the kind of difference it can make. So when might you use metaphor? In clean, metaphor has always been very core at the principles of clean. We've been broadening it out with this 5S model. But when you learn clean, usually one of the first things you learn is how to encourage clients to find and work with a metaphor for their outcome or possibly for their resources. And metaphors, so first of all, that helps people have a different way of working with outcomes and resources. And you can see what kind of difference it makes. You might notice how your state changed. If you get metaphors for states, then the metaphor can act as an anchor that helps clients to re-access states. So you remember the metaphor and things like the body comes along with it as well. And you get a different, less rational and conceptual approach. It tends to be a more creative perspective on outcomes with working with metaphor. And you notice what we're doing in clean is the clients choosing their own metaphor. Here we've used some cards, which is a good way if people are not so familiar with the idea to give them a choice. So it's still coming from them, but get them into this easily. In a lot of the time in clean, metaphors are created completely from the client, just using the questions that we use. And of course, when it comes to the client, it's usually much more alike, integrated into how they are, better representation of their experience and more likely to create a lasting change as well. So very keen on client-generated metaphor. Okay, so Wendy's going to tell us a bit about clean. I think you're mute.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, great.
Yeah, so for people who haven't encountered clean, you've already heard the word goodness knows how many times on this session. So we're going to do a very quick little introduction. So you say you don't have to know clean in order to do what we're going to do in this session. But we are going to use some of it. It was developed by David Grove, a counseling psychologist. And he found that people who had post-traumatic stress disorder, for example, healed much more readily if he stripped his questions of all his own assumptions and judgments and advice and metaphor, and all his own metaphors also he threw out. And he just made use of the resulting small set of clean questions, clean of assumptions and so on. And along with those questions, he used some of the client's words, but he didn't use any of his own words. He found that when people explored their own metaphors, and they tended to grow curious about their stuff, and they'd start to self-model. And that led to new, deeper insights, and that set the scene for change to happen, often in unexpected and naturally occurring kind of ways. The clean language can sound a bit odd, but the client doesn't care. They're too busy reflecting on their experience in this unusual situation where they're not being continually pulled out of their processing by the facilitator muddying the waters with their own idea about how the world works, and with their usually extremely unhelpful paraphrasing. The facilitator taking it upon themselves to change all the words that the client has said can really wreck the client's engagement with what they're working on. So an example or two, we had someone in the Hoover chat saying, the first image uplifted me. So it would be keen to say, and is there anything else about that uplifted? And when uplifted, what kind of uplifted is that? Or we had someone who said everything was becoming clearer. And we can say, and when everything was becoming clearer, whereabouts is that clearer? And so on. So it can sound odd to an outside listener, but as I say, the client's just so happy to, at last, have someone who is entirely going by their model of the world and not introducing extraneous stuff that means nothing to the client. So that was a very quick little introduction to clean.
And if you're paying attention, you'll notice the number of metaphors, as Wendy was pointing out just in the chat. We've had things like switch mentally. We had brought my learnings with me. We had the uplifted. Do we have? Yeah, the dropping into place. Things are dropping into place. That's another metaphor. And Wendy said things like muddy the waters, and of course reflecting. So these all things aren't literally happening, but there's we use about 6 metaphors a minute in everyday language. So part of the skill for a clean facilitator is like to listen for them all, and you start to go, blimey, they're everywhere. And then that's how we can use these very simple questions to help clients know more.
We have got a little article about the 6 metaphors a minute on our website if you wanted to have a little look, with cleanchange.co.uk.
Okay, so 3 fundamental ways humans make sense of the world, and so very, very powerful for coaching and therapy. And we've got a 4th one. And this 4th final way is understanding the world through social systems. So we are social creatures. We have to be able to understand the desires and motivations of others. So somehow internally to build models of others' behaviors, states, beliefs, and that's so that we can influence and interact and survive. That's in families, tribes, wider communities. That saber-toothed tiger, very handy to have a sense of whether it's hungry or not if you're in its vicinity. And again, the brain is very good at reusing what's already there. So we have this ability to understand the intelligent entities outside of us, but we are able to turn that ability inside to understand ourselves. So people will often talk about or act as if different parts of us have different opinions. So maybe part of us wants to go to the gym, but another wants to stay in bed. So this one we're not going to do a specific taster on, partly because of time and partly because you're going to get a very good experience of it in the main activity. But just for a second, you might consider something. Have you had the experience of feeling torn? Maybe like a part of you wanted one thing, another part of you wanted something else. This is a pretty common experience. Or you might have done this in NLP, because NLP has things like parts integration processes. So that's the kind of things that we're talking about. If what I've just said there resonates, you've had that experience, then that's what we're talking about with social systems. As I say, we'll be doing more of that in our main process. Okay, so we have my slide back up. There we go. So we've got a taste of these 4 S's. So I'm getting Zoom ready. Here we go. So we've had a taste of the somatic, and which started with the body, and then we've discovered that moving around in space, finding spaces is very valuable as well. That understanding things in terms of other things, so the symbolic and metaphors, is really powerful, and social systems is an important one as well, as we will see more of. And as a facilitator, the more you can work in each of the domains, the more you can help a client make change. So any one of these is powerful, but the more you know all 4, the more you can find the approach that best suits your client, and again, help them make a change. So some clients will find easier than others. Remember, what we're talking about are fundamental ways of understanding and making change in the world. So we're not talking about a new tool or a new process. We're talking about a deepening understanding of who we are as humans and exploring the possibilities for every client to make change. So Wendy and I have, within the space of clean, there are processes and things in each of these domains, and they're usually a bit blended. But Wendy and I have been working on how do you bring all this together? So how do you actually do that flexing with clients? How do you blend these approaches? When do you go with the approach that is a client's strength? And when and how do you develop the skills, perhaps in one of the other areas where that approach is difficult, but it would be very, very valuable for the client to be able to work in that way? And that's what we're bringing together in our 5S model. We bring together the 4 ways of making change. So symbolic, spatial, somatic, and social. Now, some of you might have been paying attention, and you might have noticed that we've only talked about 4 S's, and we keep calling it the 5S model. And that's because there's a hidden S. It's the 5th S, and it's here in the middle. It's the sweet spot in the middle, and this is psychoactivity. It's the sweet spot, like if you hit the tennis ball right in the middle of the racket, and the ball goes further and faster. As Wendy said earlier, it's when the client's inner world takes on a life of its own, seems more real to the person than their physical surroundings. Things start evolving, changing, happening of their own accord. That's with the client's metaphors, for example, and the client notices everyday things differently. You may have noticed some of this starting to happen in some of the other activities. It provides the client with a multi-sensory anchor. So resources and desired states become easier to retrieve, more memorable, outcomes are more motivating, change is more possible, and tends to happen organically on its own. So we believe the more clients working with more than one of the S's, so in any one of these you could have psychoactivity, but the more of them that are involved, the more chance the client will have a psychoactive experience. Also, there are specific ways you can encourage and maintain psychoactivity when it does happen, by the way you're working with the client. And equally, there are ways you can reduce or remove psychoactivity by the way you work, sucking the life out of things that are important to the client. And this can happen with a single question, or it can happen at a higher level. So that's our 5S model. And we're going to start leading you into an activity, which Wendy's going to tell us about.
So we're going to be doing an activity to give you an experience of using all the S's simultaneously, either as a client or as a facilitator. It's a sophisticated process, and there isn't time to do it both ways, even though we've made a stripped back version and have included just enough to give you a sense of how effective it can be to work with all the S's simultaneously. And this is the scripted activity. so you can take part no matter whether you've got any clean skills. So it's stripped back. It's not a complete process for working with a client as it stands. It's an introduction to working with the 5 S's, and it's designed to be a kind of taster. So the reason that we're doing this activity is the main aim is to experience this 5S immersive way of working fluidly that increases the chance of the client experiencing psychoactivity. And experiencing psychoactivity is valuable because it creates the conditions for long-lasting change to happen. So this process is designed to build your facilitator skills. And while the aim isn't to resolve your issue or have you achieve your outcome as a client, of course, we hope that the clients are going to have an experience of psychoactivity and find the process valuable. We know that clients do find it valuable. Okay, so
Yes.
the activity itself.
Yeah, and also say some people have then gone and used this process with their clients and had a load of great success with it. What we're saying is what we did is design it so you as facilitators can get a sense of how to facilitate in a different way that's mixing these things. So hopefully by doing this, you'll get a sense of it anyway, something you can take away and use. And it's also something to get you curious about this kind of way of working and maybe finding out more as well. So the process is on the PDF handouts we've made available. You have got a chance in the break to go and grab them as well. If you haven't got any clue how to find it or anything else, as we're going to do a demo, and you could always take photos or screenshots as you go as well, if that's an easier thing to do. So I'm going to show you the handout and just talk you through what's in it. Here we go. So we're going to, there's a number of pages. So there's a page here, just going to show you. This is, we're going to write down some key information as we go through the process. So you can have this page where you can make your own notes. You're just going to need to capture a few words. If you're in the facilitator role, you would capture a few words from your client. So we've got things like P1. These are just the labels we're using in the process. And that will become clearer later. So that page is where you're going to write some things down. And there's a page here where we're going to invite, not yet, because we're going to show you the demo. We're going to show you Wendy's version of this. This is where you can set things up as a client. So again, this isn't particularly clean because we're going to kind of impose on you the idea that there are two parts of you, in the sense of finding something you'd like to change, but you have tried to change and it hasn't changed. So we're going to invite you to think about that and imagine it's as if there was a part of you that wanted to make the change, another part that didn't. So that's going to be the setup. Talk a bit more about it. You'll see Wendy's example. But on this page, there's a chance to do a sketch of these two parts and to put some words on it, so to label them. We're going to get a label for parts. Maybe you drew something in here that's like happy hamster. That would be a good example of a label, a couple of short words. So this is the page that's going to happen on. So we'll talk a bit more about that when we get to it. So those are the two, sets you up as a client, gives you somewhere to record things as the facilitator, and then there's 2 sheets that are actually the process. Again, we're going to do a demo, so we'll take you through it step by step. But the rough way to orient yourself into the process is it sort of runs left to right. So we start with this box and we kind of go down the questions like this. And then we go from here, then to the next box, number 1, then to 2, running across, then 3, then 4, then 5. And when we get there, then we're going to go down to the next page, which makes it difficult for me to do. There we go. And there's a 6, 7, and 8. appear over here as well. So there we go. There. That's how you can follow through the process on the 2 pages. So we'll be demoing it in a minute, so you can see that a bit more step by step. As we say, what we've done is we've scripted it, so you can ask exactly the questions that are on here. Just follow through the process, and the idea is by noticing what's happening, you'll see how we're swapping between spaces, personas, which are the social systems, symbolic, which are the metaphors, and embodied, which are the body. And so get a sense of how this fluidness works. What you'll notice on here is some of these words are in a sort of bluey colour, like here. So, so I do the demo. I said earlier, we're going to capture some of the client's words. So something like this. That's a nice complicated one, isn't it? There we go. So I'll pick that one down the bottom. So if the client said something, oh, here we go. The client's answered a question, and what could that be called? We've asked. The client says something, we call it P3. That's what we write down. What could that be called? And let's say Wendy says, oh, that's the jumping frog. That is, in fact, so we write that down. When we ask a question like this, what kind of P3 is that? P3. The blue colours mean we put the client's words in. And what kind of jumping frog is that jumping frog? That's what that blue colour is, and that's why we're writing things down on that other sheet with the little labels in it. So as Wendy said earlier, we use the clean questions and we use the client's exact words. And this is the way the client can be immersed in their own experience with us ideally doing little more than guiding their attention to useful places. Okay, so just a reminder that we're doing this to build your facilitator skills, but it's also really good to do this as a client, because then you kind of understand what kind of effects it has. Yes, I think that's what I need to say about that. Okay, so I'll come back to the fiddle Zoom tools, which I'm pausing. So let's just come back to this page and talk more about that for a second. So we'd like you to be considering, and you'll have a bit of time over the break to do this as well after the demo. So what's something you'd like to change that you've tried to change, but it hasn't changed, or the change didn't stick? So, and it's almost as if there's a part of you that wanted to make the change and another part that didn't. So the invitation then is to, as you can see up here, we've got some little instructions. I don't have to listen to my words, to actually sketch each part and draw a little picture of each one. So the part of me that wants to make the change, the part of me that doesn't. You're not going to need to show this to anyone if you don't want to. Wendy will show us hers. So again, it doesn't need to be a work of art. Some scribbles will do. Having done that, you find a 1 or 2 word label for the part. It's going to help make your facilitator's life a bit easier. Like I said, happy hamster, maybe it's a magician or a wise woman or a critic or a dragon, whatever. But it's some kind of intelligent entity in some way. Also, have a look in the sketch and see, and ideally try and find something else that symbol perhaps has. So maybe there's a warrior who's wearing armor, or your happy hamster is wearing lucky pants, or the magician has a magic wand, or there's a dog and it's got a sensitive nose. So what we're doing here is we're setting things up. So you've got personas, which are like social system things, and we've got metaphor things, symbol things as well. And also in terms of this, because this might be the first time you've worked with things like personas, social systems, we suggest not working with issues where one part wants to hurt, get rid of, destroy the other one. So if it's anything particularly getting rid of or violence. Trying to use a different example. And anything else I need to say about that? And just to say, this is a completely unclean way of setting things up because we're imposing a whole bunch of things on you. But the idea is to get the client to with enough information in the right structure that we can run a scripted process so you can experience it as a facilitator. As I say, plenty of people get an awful lot out of this as clients as well. If we were doing this cleanly, we'd more be asking questions, listening for these kind of parts, and as we were hearing them starting to do something that was more like the process you're going to go through. But that's where it gets skilled. All right. So I think we're ready to do our demo. Okay, so I'm going to turn this off for a second so Wendy can show us what she's done. So she's prepared. So I would say this is real. This is a new thing that I haven't seen before. Wendy did send me this picture before the call, but we always work on real stuff. This is real stuff for Wendy, and we're going to see what happens. And I just need to get my notes. Wait 1 second. Right. Okay, great. So Wendy is going to tell us about her picture.
So there's an eager girl. She's got a warm heart, so that's her symbol. And she's looking happy in the picture, but there's a pool of tears there. And there's an energy analyst, energy analyst over here. And she has a clipboard. She's not the best pleased with what she's been finding with her analyzing. And the outcome is to stay warm-hearted and be content.
Right, so we'll back. Oh, that's the thing. Sorry, I forgot to say. When you're sketching, so you find the labels like Wendy has. So the P1 is eager girl, P2 was energy analyst. The eager girl had a warm heart, so that's how S1 is the warm heart. The energy analyst had a clipboard, so that's how S2 is the clipboard. And what would we like to have happen is an outcome. So stay warm-hearted and be content. When you do this as a client, you try and keep your outcome to about 6 to 10 words, again, to make your facilitator's life easier, and that would be appreciated. All right, and I'm actually doing this on my own notes, but as Wendy was saying that, we can write the P2, P1, P2, S1, S2 outcome for those sort of 4 things onto that sheet. So we've captured exactly our client words. That means we are ready to have a go at the process. So what we're going to do is step through this so I can show you how it works, and you can watch what Wendy's doing as well. Let me get my pointer ready. Okay, so we've just started here. What are your labels? And we've got P1, S1, P2, and S2. So I'm going to start here. So remember, this piece is also not especially clean, setting things up, but we're going to get some things into space. So we've got the P's, the personas, the social system things. We're now going to get things into space. They're involving space as well. So find a place in the room to represent eager girl. Notice how I put the words in. Mark there with a post-it note or a piece of paper.
I've marked eager girl.
Okay. And find a place in the room to represent energy analyst and mark there with a post-it note or piece of paper.
Yep, done.
Okay. And then stand or sit somewhere else, which seems the right place to start. And mark that with a post-it note or piece of paper.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So now we're set up. So everything else from now on is going to be thing questions and directives. So we're going to start with developing Wendy's outcome. We're starting with some more symbolic things, which is just developing an outcome. And Wendy, what would you like to have happen?
I'd like to stay warm-hearted and be content.
And is there anything else about stay warm-hearted and be content?
It means the tears have to stop.
The tears have to stop. And is there anything else about stay warm-hearted and be content?
Well, if I managed, then things would be lighter.
So, the one other thing you can do is on the script is sometimes say back some exact words that the client said, because it might just feel very mechanical if you don't do that. So that's an allowed thing in the process. So you notice me doing that from time to time. Okay, so we're going to switch now and see if we can just find out a little bit about things from an embodied point of view. And when stay warm-hearted and be content, what's happening now in your body?
You just keep sighing.
You keep sighing. Is there anything else about that?
It just feels unattainable.
Right. Now we're going to find out a bit more about the landscape, as we call it, that Wendy's in. We've laid some things out in space, but we're actually going to ask them about personas, so the social systems. And is there anything else about eager girl?
Yeah, she's looking for fun. Uh, she wants to engage her sister-in-law. She's looking for fun things.
Looking for fun things and wants to engage her sister-in-law. But just out of interest, if we weren't doing a scripted process, we might notice that sister-in-law is another intelligent entity, another persona. So as a facilitator, we might think about putting some attention on sister-in-law, maybe finding a spatial location for sister-in-law in all this as well. So that sounds like it's important, but we're going to follow the script. And in what direction could eager girl be facing?
Towards in the direction of sister-in-law.
Another aspect of space is not just where you are, but also can be what direction you're looking in. So these facing questions are useful for exploring that kind of aspect of things. Okay, so we found out a little bit more about the eager girl. So we're going to do 2 more questions to find out about the other persona, our other intelligent entity in the social system. And is there anything else about energy analyst?
got a grim expression.
Grim expression. And what direction could energy analyst be facing?
Energy analyst is looking at eager girl.
At this point, we've got space involved. And you might have noticed Wendy's looking around at the things in space. So there's a bit of psychoactivity going on. But what we can now do is go and visit spaces, a bit like you did with your outcomes. But at the same time, because we've located personas there, we've located an intelligent entity. Wendy's not just kind of going to a space, it's going to a space that has the meaning associated with it of that entity. So this is a bit of a mix. And we're going to give an instruction rather than a question. And go to eager girl. We notice that Wendy's actually moved in space. And the one thing to notice here is that almost standing on that persona and becoming that persona is an option. And that can quite often be very psychoactive. So you can notice a little whether your client's doing that. It may be you do a bit of psychoeducation and mentioning that that's a possibility for them when you do these kind of processes. Otherwise, people sometimes stand outside of the persona, which is a perfectly fine thing to do. They don't realise that option is available to them. If you're noticing carefully, because I was busy looking at my notes and things, but I did catch out the corner of my eye, it looks like Wendy's arms were swinging around. She looks a bit like she might actually be an eager girl. This is the kind of thing that happens. Okay, and also when people visit spaces, they quite often have a state change or something happens, so asking some embodied questions can be a really good idea. So, and what's happening now in your body?
My body, I'm scanning with my eyes.
And is there anything else about that?
I'm waiting for my heart to get happy with something I see. I found two things already.
So you've noticed it's looking very much like Wendy's actually become eager girl. That's going to just change how we can ask the questions in a moment. So to give you a chance of noticing, we can do some things with symbols as well. We're going to ask about the symbol that eager girl has, which is the warm heart. And what kind of warm heart is that warm heart?
Sad.
Is there anything else about that warm heart?
It feels like it's getting smaller.
And feels like it's getting smaller. Now we're going to really go into some social system stuff and find out eager girl's opinion on the outcome. And because Wendy's kind of become eager girl, we could ask this question: what does eager girl, that's P1, know about stay warm-hearted and be content? Because Wendy's seems to have become eager girl, and she's saying things like using I as she's describing the experience. What we can do is put you in there instead, and that would be more psychoactive for her. And what do you know about stay warm-hearted and be content?
I want to stay warm-hearted. I don't want to be content.
Stay warm-hearted, don't want to be content. And what do you know about energy analyst?
I don't think she's got any heart.
I don't think she's got any heart. What would you like to have happen?
I want to have a sisterly relationship that's with joy and fun.
Want to have a sisterly relationship with joy and fun. We can see here that the equals, that's words we want to be writing down for P1's outcome. We're going to need those words later. Okay, so we visited the persona, first intelligent entity, found out a bit about its opinion on the overall outcome and what it would actually like to have happen. And we're going to do a very similar thing, but for the second one. And when eager girl is there, go to energy analyst. And what's happening now in your body?
Heaviness.
Heaviness. Is there anything else about that?
It's getting heavier.
And a clipboard. What kind of clipboard is that clipboard?
That's just the usual one.
You see if the client's doing things like picking up literal objects in the real world becoming more meaningful. We're definitely in psychoactive territory here. And is there anything else about that clipboard?
It's heavy with bad statistics. Statistics about how many tears have been shed, how many heart emojis haven't been returned, how much energy is gone.
So again, Wendy looks very much like she's in this persona, so we can use you again rather than saying, what does energy analyst know about outcome? We'll use the you here. And what do you know about stay warm-hearted and be content?
What she does with her heart is her business. But content would be good. Stop wasting all this energy.
And what do you know about eager girl?
She's naive and she should grow up. Face the fact the situation's probably not going to change.
So you can see in this, we're getting in the social systems world, we get a sense of how the parts relate to each other. your opinions of each other, but also the main thing we're going to do is find out their outcomes and their opinions on other outcomes that are around. So we've already asked the energy analyst her opinion on the overall outcome, stable-hearted and be content. But now we're going to ask the opinion on the eager girl's outcome. And the eager girl would like a sisterly relationship with joy and fun. And would you like that?
That would be fine. But sister-in-law is awfully sad, awfully overwhelmed. You can't ask for help or accept it.
And what would you like to have happen?
I'd like eager girl to grow up, stop wasting energy, and get on with living.
For that phone, you might notice, and anyone who does any kind of working with relationships things, notice how often people have an outcome that's actually about someone else. We call these put upon outcomes, because you're putting an outcome on another person. You can absolutely do this with your inner system and have a part of you, a persona in this case, that wants another persona to be different, be something different. And we've got that here. Because we're doing this checking in on outcomes, what we do is now go back to the first persona, to eager girl, and find out what eager girl thinks, or not just thinks, but eager girl's opinion on what we just heard, this new outcome. And when energy analyst is there, go to eager girl. And energy analyst would like you to grow up, stop wasting energy, and get on with living. And would you like that?
I don't want to lose my best chance of having a sister. I wanted a sister forever.
You don't want to lose your best chance of having a sister. You wanted a sister forever. Okay, and we're going to move on to the next page. Carry on. We're obviously, we are, and therefore our client is also finding out a lot about how this is structured. One of the things we can do is, with space, is visit a broader perspective. There's one of the techniques in space, a space that's outside of what we've visited so far, and that's what we're going to do in these first questions, which is a space technique. And eager girl, and warm heart, and energy analyst, and clipboard. And find a space that knows about all of that. Let's move somewhere else. Just in terms of, it's useful just to notice the environment, because I just noticed Wendy's moving the chair around. There is some possibility, particularly if you're doing this as a more fluid facilitating that might actually be something significant about the chair. But we're not going to explore that at the moment. Wendy's in the new location, so you might know something different here. So we'll find out. And what do you know about all that from there?
Ego girl can't make sister-in-law be better. Can't make her engage.
And is there anything else you know from there?
He's tried everything possible to get sister-in-law engaging. It's not that sister-in-law doesn't like her. They both like each other. That sister-in-law is in a really bad place. She's not up for engaging with anyone.
I notice in this little block of questions, we invited Wendy to move to a new space. But this isn't a space that represents a persona, it's just a space that's somewhere different and from which you can know something different. What we can do with social systems is a similar type of technique where we discover if there's another kind of persona, intelligent entity that's somehow hanging around, excuse my metaphor, but not making itself known. We'll give it a chance to have a say on it. And is there anything else that knows something about all that?
Yeah.
Yes. So just notice if you get a no on this, in terms of the process, this script, you just come over to this box and finish off the rest of these questions. If we get a yes, we get a chance to have a go at a third persona. Yes. And what could that be called?
A friend.
Friend. And what kind of friend is that friend?
Kind. Friend. Kind.
Kind friend. And where could that friend be?
Yeah.
You see, Wendy's already got the hang of this process. So she hadn't gone there. We'd say go to friend. She's done it already. And what's happening now?
It's feels a bit lighter.
A bit like that. And so I'm not knowing Wendy, she probably has stepped into the persona, so we could use a you, but I'm not absolutely sure. So I'm going to use the name of the persona here. And what does that kind friend know?
Ego girl is using up too much energy. And I know that the energy analyst is right. Ego girl can't keep losing all the energy she's losing from trying to get sister-in-law engaged with her and the world. It can't keep on.
What would friends like to have happen?
Well, I'd like some more eager girl being more completely my friend. I would like her attention more on me and the outside world.
You like more of eager girl, more completely your friend, like her attention more on you, not the outside world. So we'll bring it to a conclusion now. And go to where you started.
Oh. Mhm.
And what do you know now?
It's been like constant harassing from the energy analyst and wild swings between, oh, hey, I found something fun that you'll like, and we'll get some joy going. So between that and crashing back into more tears as the fun things not got the sister-in-law engaging. Been going on, all of it's been going on too long.
And knowing that, what's happening in your body now?
I can breathe better.
You can breathe better. And what difference does knowing all that make?
It's time to draw a line under the morning. Let go of the sadness. And to do more focusing always round to build other relationships.
And is this a good place to pause for now?
Yeah. Okay.
So, as we said, it's a very scripted process. There's lots of opportunities we might have had in there to do things, follow different threads. The sister-in-law was a possibility at the beginning for another persona and that we could put out into space. But equally, what hopefully you've seen and you'll get a chance to experience is that we can get Wendy's attention on things in the social system, her personas, internal parts of herself, and use the benefits of space, both to put the personas into space to know even more about them, but to have perspectives outside of them, that broader perspective. We've used another thing from the persona modeling, which is the social systems thing, about finding other personas that know something. So another way of getting a broader perspective, having the body involved. We saw psychoactivity. Wendy was like becoming the personas. You could see her looking at them in space as if it was real. And so that's what we're talking about with psychoactivity. And yeah, so as we said, but both, you absolutely get things out of this as a client. We very much recommend taking it as a client experience to learn more about the process as well. Anything you want to say about it, Wendy?
No. It it really it's a good way to help make things real.
Fantastic. Okay.
And
So
it is,
oh,
sorry, I should say, it is what, as Paul said, this was new stuff. This is real and earnest, and I hadn't worked it through. So, even under these not ideal circumstances for change work, I have got a bunch of new and different awarenesses of what needs to happen now with this ongoing situation.
cool. Fantastic. Okay, so we're going to take a break in a second. So during the break, obviously stretch, get a cup of tea, whatever else you need to do. But make sure you've got the handouts available. Printing them's probably a pretty good idea. I think we quite strongly recommend it so you can follow along. But if you've got other clever ways of doing things, feel free. If you could fill in your client page in the break as well. So notice that something that you've wanted to change and haven't been able to change, and the two personas, the two parts, as if it were one that wanted to change and one that didn't, and get your labels. That would mean everything's nicely set up for us to do the activity. As I say, when we would like everyone to do this, though when we do the activity, it's only going to be one way round. But just even doing this will give you a feel for what it's like to structure your world in terms of personas and social systems. So it's valuable. And of course, you can always grab a practice partner after the conference and have a go the other way around. Anything else to say on that, Wendy?
No, I don't think so. Right.
It's definitely a working break, but do stretch, do whatever you need to do with your bodies, and beverages. I'm going to top up my water, and we'll see you back soon. Welcome back. All right, so now it's going to be the chance to have a go as a client or facilitator with the process. As we say, we've only got time to do it one way round. When we've done run-throughs of this, quite a lot of the feedback has said about how valuable it is to be the client in this process, because you actually get an experience of what's going on in the process, not just like what the questions are and the steps are. And the way it's worked out, because we had such a lot of assistance offering to help us, it's basically setting up the rooms. So almost all of you have got one of our assistants. So you can have someone facilitate you or facilitate them, and they also know the process quite well and know clean quite well as well. There'll be one pair, which I'm going to join that room as well. So everyone is going to have basically a dedicated person around if you want to ask questions or help. So it's I'd say quite recommended to have a go as a client, because you'll get a very different experience of the process. But it's entirely up to you. If you want to facilitate it, that's all good. It really varies. We've seen people take different amounts of time through the process because it depends how long your client takes to answer questions. We're going to give you about 35 minutes for facilitating. It's 40 in the breakout room, so we suggest maybe about 35 for facilitating, and you've got a chance for a few minutes debrief at the end. And I think that's about it. Anything else to say, Wendy, before we send people off?
No, I think that's about it. The assistants are all prepared to be a client, so you absolutely have the choice, participants, as to which role you take. But I think Paul's right. You get a sense of the depth of the process from being a client, and the process is scripted, so you take away your handout with all the information for doing the facilitating.
Yeah. As clients, if you could be reasonably short with your answers, that's the only thing, because that will help fit it into the time. And as facilitators, as I say, it's just the client words and the questions, but you can do a little bit of repeating back the words. Again, particularly if you have done this kind of thing before, you're a bit more experienced, try not to do long and frequent ones just because of keeping things to time. Excellent. Having said that, we'll send you all off. You've all got someone who has done the process before, so any questions you can ask them. And we'll see you back in 40 minutes or so.
A chance for us to find out about people's experience and learnings and so on. And what do you think, Paul? Do you think we are at a point where we could ask people to say a little something about their experience?
I'm wondering, maybe if we all just did a little something in the chat, and then, yeah, we'll get people sharing and actually talking, which would be nice.
Yeah, okay. So something you learned, something you found interesting, something you're taking from this, a little comment in the chat about your some aspect of your experience.
Okay, that's a great comment. We've got Alison did a great job. So, wow, thank you, Alison, for a beautifully guided session. A very happy yogi from Wendy. And I said enlightening. What is it? I now have a name I'm not going to pronounce very well. Is it Mojka? Right. Okay, excellent process. Structure lent itself really well to insights and finding a new way forward with change. Alison, I was reminded of how helpful space can be, and also the coach being adaptable to what comes up. Wendy has an improved awareness of space and how the areas can feel so very different. Frauke was a really useful process to detangle some thought knots. Mojka, again, had specific insights to put into practice to implement the change. And asking, what more is there to this process that we didn't cover? So we can come back to that. Fiona loved the movement and symbols, useful insights and awareness. Lisa was great to combine space and metaphor, and metaphors for metaphors, which was delightful. It's been interesting to be a fly on the wall for that. Helen was interesting. I probably need time to let everything settle. Mojka's space and different perceptual positions are powerful for sparking new insights. And Tanya said, as a facilitator, I was aware of how often I might have gone in a particular direction. So it's a good discipline to stay on script.
Fantastic.
Exploring the different positions in space seemed really powerful, as was the attention on the felt experience.
Fantastic. Tanya, I really like what you've said, because I think that's one of the things that clean can be really useful for, is if you're sticking to clean questions, then you quickly start to be able to notice when the question that you'd like to ask is coming from your stuff rather than from what might be most relevant for the client. So brilliant that you noticed that, and it sounds like you stuck to the process. It takes a bit of doing that.
Yeah, and I think also, because I was observing there's a bit of, if you know, I mean, I'm sure everyone here is probably pretty experienced, so you'll know processes. You probably can identify how that process is. You already know, perhaps use metaphor or space or the body or some kind of parts persona type of thing. But when you know all of them, you get a lot of versatility. So if let's say you've been very trained in some parts work, then what will tend to happen is every client, you'll notice the parts and that's what you'll go for. And that's going to be great for some clients, and others it won't work quite so well with. So this ability to kind of, why we said it's facilitator skills, it's partly that you're aware of all of these and then can flex between them and then choose what might go down well with your client.
I thought there was quite a nice little piece from Frauke. I'm probably dreadfully mispronouncing your name, and I apologize. So in terms of kind of tweaking things to suit your client, if your client had said to you, it's a really useful process to detangle some thought knots, I would personally be doing all right, we'll be working with symbols then, because that's, detangle some thought knots. It's a bundle of symbols that is being used, and so that starts to suggest that that's a way of processing or understanding the world that's easily available to that particular client. So why wouldn't you start off using that process?
I just wondered, do we have a few, if anyone would like to share a sentence or two? It's actually nice to hear from people. So it's nice to do the chat when you've got quite a few people, because you can get a sense of what everyone's done. It's much more personal. It's what we do on our trainings a lot more, is to actually talk to each other. So hearing a few sentences from people would be lovely. Anyone like to share something? So let's say something you'd learned or something about your experience.
I think most of you had a chance to do a bit of debriefing with in the little breakout rooms. So, whether it's from the process itself or from that bit of talking at the end, there might be nice little snippets that would be interesting to everyone else in the group if you were up for sharing them.
Yes, Alison, I think would like to. Alison. So now our stewards, I think, have to let you speak or something.
Yeah, my observation was about the limitations of Zoom. And so I was the client, and when we started off, I mean, I've got quite a big lounge area, and I only had to just step a bit that side. I was just immediately out of vision. But kind of what I realised really is, because I have sort of done this before, but quite often when you do change a space, it's often the objects that are in your vision that give that space something. So what I did just to sort of help it go forward for both of us was I just brought the thing that had caught my eye into the camera, or very close to the camera, so that actually I personally didn't physically move around too much, but I took the object from the place that I'd went to and brought it back. And I think that just helped us with the limitations of a small camera setup, as opposed to what you've got in the real world where you can physically move great, long spaces. I mean, for me as the coachee, that works really well. I'm not so sure whether it worked as well for the coach, but the coach would be able to say what her experience was if she wanted to speak. I don't know. I don't want to say that in case she doesn't want to speak, but
it's true to say with Clean that we pretty much work on the basis that what the coach would prefer is irrelevant. We're doing things in line with what's going to be most useful for the client. So it's just tough if the coach doesn't much like the way things are. Of course, there are limits to that. If you've got a coach who can't hear in one ear, it's going to be useless if the client puts them next to themselves with the coach's right ear or deaf ear closest. It won't work. But apart from that sort of thing, we kind of expect clean coaches to get on and get flexible and do things that
Yeah.
client.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
there's,
Lisa was my coach and she did a great job of it.
Thank-
there was a
I liked it because we ended up with like double metaphors. And so I think whilst I did my best to stick to the script, I know if we had an hour or an hour and a half, we could have spent loads more time exploring the objects that had caught Alison's eye. And there was enough movement, I felt, for Alison to kind of be in a slightly different place to get, or space to get, a different embodied experience. And I really liked the dynamic of another object that was coming in that was then doing it. And I was conscious that we had 35 minutes, and so there was a lot of exploration, but I felt we could have done even more. So yeah, it was really real delight to work with you, Alison. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Lisa, and you.
so something I was going to say about when we say about what we find is clients will tend to try and make accommodations for the facilitator. I think there's probably two reasons. One is you get people who are just naturally people pleasers. And the other one is because you're the expert, you're the great person they've come to who can make it all better because you're so amazing and wonderful and talented. So we try and do everything we can to go, no, actually, you're in charge, you're the expert on yourself as a client. You've got agency. So lots of these things, they come out in how you ask the questions and how you are as a clean facilitator. One of the things about Zoom is on the whole, you really don't need to see where someone's gone. If you're doing space processes, they don't need to be on the screen. It's handy, you get a few clues as a facilitator. But if someone wants to use the room and you can't see them, that doesn't matter. The major one on Zoom is, can you hear them? So as long as that's true. So just notice where you're making, if the client's making accommodations for you as a facilitator, try and encourage them not to, except where it really matters for you to be able to do a good job. Excellent.
So I think there's something in what Lisa was saying that relates to, and I don't know how to say your name, Moika, who's saying she's wondering what more there is to this process that we didn't cover. And Lisa was saying if there'd been an hour or longer in her group, they could have done a lot more exploring. So that's one of the answers to what we didn't cover. You didn't do nearly as much in-depth exploring of any of the personas or symbols or desired outcome or any other resources for that matter as we could have done. And if you simply added quite a lot of, and is there anything else about persona one, and what kind of symbol is that symbol? So what kind of and anything else? If you put a whole lot more of those questions in about everything that the client was talking about, not everything, but everything that seems most important, that would straight away help to deepen the process further. You're going to talk about personas. And
well, no, actually, I was going to say, and just contextualize this process. This is kind of training wheels to develop some facilitator skills. So metaphor might be you're learning a musical instrument, say you're learning the piano. The first one might be, I can play bar, bar, black sheep with my finger. that's the equivalent of actually being able to ask the clean questions, not put your own words in. Then you kind of maybe learn some two-handed things and you're following the music. That's the kind of script that we're giving. What we're aiming is to get people to be like jazz musicians. So you can just walk into a room not knowing what you're going to play, and it doesn't matter. Beautiful music's going to come out. So this is absolutely a process you can do. You could take it and expand it in the ways Wendy's talking about. But this is the first step of you kind of knowing what's possible, so that we can, and I'm going to say a bit in a minute about the kinds of things we might do to escape the process. But we're trying very hard because everyone likes processes and tools, and this is different because it's a process intending to give you the skills so you don't need processes and tools anymore.
And
Yes.
we've got Tanya with her hand up, and also Debs. Tanya.
Hi, yes, a couple of questions, if I could. One, I just quickly put in the chat, which is if you're in the room with the client, I presume that you would ask the client where they would like you to be for the whole process.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
That occurred to me a couple of minutes ago that we should say, and so it's brilliant you've said that.
Yeah, okay,
This
great.
is a thing that we would usually do with face-to-face clients, is start the session by asking the client, and where would you like to be? And making sure we haven't got all our stuff all over the most comfortable big chair in the room. So they have a real choice. And then when they've chosen where they want to be, saying, where would you like me to be? So they can put you in relation to them as well. Yeah, that's great. That's such a simple thing, and it's something that one can do in almost every single situation. There's very seldom that there's only one place that the client can be, and only one place you can be in terms of, where the chairs or whatever are. So it's a really nice way to make use of space and to implicitly tell the client that they have options and what they want counts in this way of working.
Yeah.
Really helpful. That's
Thank
brilliant.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And sorry, one follow-up question. Just generally, I assume that people come to you, they're going to Clean Change website. They know that this is, or might expect that this is the process that they're going to do with you. If they came to me or someone else who is an NLP therapist in whatever area, any tips on how to pre-frame this kind of process to let them know, because you don't know what they're expecting, and as you say, sometimes it can sound a little bit awkward in terms of the language. Is there any way that you could set that up for the client to check that they're really buying into, yes, I'm curious about this, I would like to try and give it a go?
I'd say you, on the whole, don't. We get a lot of questions about this, and the idea is to be very, very with your client. So if your client turns up, and you might have some things that aren't strictly clean at the start, like, how is your journey?
Mm-hmm.
Just to get in the room. But you start with, what would you like to have happen? And start asking questions about it. And the questions are actually normal English questions. What kind of, anything else about? On the whole, clients don't think that's odd. And you might start in a more conversational style. Perhaps you might start a little bit less clean. But once, particularly if you've got this 5S awareness, you start noticing, hang on, they use metaphors all the time. You start asking about it. A client who volunteers metaphors will just go with it. And saying you can pick up, they're using quite a few body words, and probably if you ask someone who uses quite a lot of body words about their body, they'll just go with it. So you don't need very much. But there is also a bit with this sometimes. If you think, well, it would be very handy for them probably to do a space process, and they've probably never done this before, you sort of swap into a slightly different hat and do a bit more, almost like psychoeducation-y bit, like a bit more like we did with you with, maybe there's a space in the room. Why don't you take your outcome and go there and see what you notice? Why don't you try a bad space? Okay, so what did you notice about space? You can even do that activity. So there are things where you break out strict clean to help the client recognize there's a way of working and see if they'd want to do it. And we've been thinking a lot recently about how we do those kind of things. So things like cleanish, and when you do education and how you do that in as clean a possible way. So that's all very leading edge stuff that we've been working on at the moment.
Yeah.
But they're great questions.
If
Thank
you're putting the client's attention on their desired outcome with your clean questions, I mean, they've come to you because they're wanting to achieve something, mostly. And if you are there and aiming to get to the heart of whatever that is, it's very compelling for the client. It becomes quite hard for them to do that. No, you're asking really good questions, getting to the heart of things. But I just want to stop and say that, you asked a slightly odd sounding question then, and why did you do that? That they just don't do it. Mostly they just don't even notice it. But even if they do, it's so nice for people to be listened to so well and have only their own stuff said back to them, which makes them feel completely understood. That, people are mostly not up for stopping that interaction anytime soon. So you can actually get away with doing a lot less explaining than you perhaps imagine. Also, if you're convinced yourself that what you're doing is going to be useful, I think you come across in a kind of credible way that helps the client to buy into it as well. And as soon as they think that what you're doing is likely to be useful, they kind of approach the activity or whatever you're doing, the facilitation, in a way that, again, probably makes it useful because of how they're paying attention, just for starters.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nice question. Okay.
All right.
I don't think we've got any more hands up, and we are getting to a point where we should probably be moving on a touch.
Yes. So just going to do a little bit of a summary. So first of all, when we've covered some of this, just to say a few things about that script. As we said, it's highly constrained, and it's more about helping you as a facilitator to notice what's possible. So a few things. So in real life, we've been saying what we're really aiming to is adapt to what emerges from the client. So initially get their attention on their outcome, and we kind of see where that leads. But to see where that leads actually needs quite a lot of skill. But by doing a script, you can get a real sense of all the things that are possible and some of the techniques as a facilitator. So some of the things to notice, in the real world, we wouldn't impose a persona structure. So that bit at the beginning was, in a way, horrendously unclean, because we said you will structure your world as parts. You will have two of them.
And
erg.
we'll have people.
Yeah, so erg from a clean point of view, but necessary from a training point of view. And so the script kind of has a standard thing to work on. So just to notice that. And in a real session, you'd have much more potentially emerging. You'd notice other symbols and maybe ask a few questions about them. Certainly in the room I was in, there was another persona that would have been really interesting for the client, probably to have in space and visit. We noticed with Wendy, sister-in-law, that was likely to be a persona that was worth getting located and visiting as well. So things like that emerge just naturally that you listen for and you'd make use of. So we probably do more exploration, probably dependent on what the client was reacting well to. So if it seemed to be they were getting a felt sense and it was particularly important, we'd spend more time with the directing attention to the body. Or if an important resourceful symbol pops up, we might spend rather more time asking some questions about that so the client really knows it and can access it again. For things like, by the way, these are all written on the bottom of the last slide, the things I'm saying. When we do the go to X, there is clean space is actually quite directive, but in a process more like this, we might actually ask, would you be interested in going to, before we do the go to? would you be interested in going to Happy Hamster? And make sure there's a yes there. Part of what we're doing with the 5S model is helping you to notice that there's these different styles. Actually, different styles might suit different clients. I think, like I said, some clients, what they notice in their body is really important. So spending more time there is important. Other clients go, body? What's that? So that might be a developmental thing for them, but asking them lots of questions about their body to start with isn't going to go well. So you can calibrate these aspects of your client and focus the questions on particular types of S, depending on what suits your client. And all of this is a strict process. One of the key things in Clean is keeping track of the outcome and then trying to visit locations or ask questions based on what seems most important and unknown and in service of that outcome. So if the client already knows it, you don't, that doesn't matter. It's what's important for the client. So again, where will they learn the most that's most relevant? That's the absolute top guiding principle. Those are the kind of things. So to remind us all, we have been my beginning. So that this is what we've been exploring. And as I said at the beginning, it's not like adding one more process or adding some tools in the toolbox. This is about fundamental ways that humans understand the world. So actually in each of these, there's an absolute richness that you can explore. So I'll run around them. So for example, if you do symbolic, we said you can use metaphors. People are using them all the time. So if you learn to listen for them, you can just drop in questions on metaphor and it comes across very naturally. And it's useful for, so very multi-sensory anchors is one of the really good, particularly good ones. But equally, if you get someone's outcome into metaphor, they're going to know an awful lot about it. So there's a whole wealth of things you can learn in something called symbolic modeling, which is like the clean way of working with metaphor, like an entire coaching process. And it's about listening to the metaphors and developing them and noticing the effects of change and maturing things when they change and working out conditions for change. Lots of things in there. Down in space, so we noticed that. I think we've all noticed just even where you are in the room makes a difference. That's something you could do in client sessions very easily. We've got a whole thing on lots of processes, one called clean space. Over in the somatic, bringing attention to the body, as Jendlin's research showed, it's clients' felt sense. That seems to be a big part of whether they actually make a change. And we've got a huge amount of things we've developed for Clean in terms of bringing attention to the body and actually developing body resources. And actually all the embodiment processes you may have come across elsewhere. We've done a lot of cleaning them up and working out how they work and how to integrate them into pure Clean processes. And over in the social systems, we've got processes around persona modeling. So the kind of things you probably were noticing about, and there's an outcome here, but the other one doesn't agree with it. How do you kind of explore all the personas, get all the outcomes out, do all the negotiation? What happens if one does want to destroy another one? So each of these is incredibly rich with things that you could learn more.
And the things you've just been saying about persona modeling in particular, I think again go to an awful lot of that wasn't in this process, just to carry on answering that question earlier.
Yeah, so there's two things with the process we've shown you. One is it's to develop some skills. Probably after this, there is more you'll be able to do with what you already know. But it's also an invitation to, so there are all these areas that are very, very rich. You might like to take a deeper dive into any or all of them. And there is this possibility of this incredibly integrated, joined up type of facilitation. We take a very long time to work out how people who've been doing this for years and years and years, who work very fluidly, how we could teach that to people who are basically very new coaches. I know you aren't, but that's why we did the scripted process. You might like to go and do it the other way around, whatever round you did after this. And the other thing to say, because we are now very out of time, and I'm sure Sophie's going to be looking at us because she wants to do a roundup of feedback. We are running some taster sessions on embodied clean that are coming up in a few weeks after the conference. So you're welcome to come to that. They're like 2-hour free webinar where we'll be focusing more on the body.
And on our exhibiting, so on our exhibitor stand, you can get the details for them.
Yeah, if you go to our cleanchange.co.uk, it's on the homepage to register. The images we use today are our metaphor cards. We're running a raffle. So again, if you come to our booth and sign up for the raffle, you might be able to win a pack. We do actually sell them as well. But once you've got the idea, it's not a sales pitch, it's just that was a convenient thing to use for our thing today. They've got the clean language questions on the back. The major thing to say, obviously we run training and all of this, but quite a while ago we decided to do our training in a very different way. So you can come and do a training course with us. Like the next one we're doing is Embodied Clean in about a month or so. It's like weekly training sessions over about 14 weeks. But what we do is run our trainings completely end to end. So what we have is now a community of people, and you've seen quite a few of the people we've got. It's people with incredible experience from a range of backgrounds, and we're all going on a journey together. So we'll kind of go through part of this, and then it's actually about how do you apply it in your work, how do you integrate it with things you already know. It's like an ongoing CPD with a bunch of incredible people for as long as you like, which is amazing. Right. I've been, because it took us a long time to get this going, and it's the thing I always wanted to build. So you can find out more about that. Community is based on people actually coming on Zoom calls and doing this kind of work together. We have a few community sessions. We've got a whole online platform as well, with video courses and materials and goodness knows what. I'm running out of time, otherwise I'd screen share it. So Sophie still likes me. At this point, I will stop talking. And thank you all very much for coming and joining in.
Yes, thank you, everybody. And thank you to all our assistants, and thank you to all our stunning stewarding people. Fantastic.
Yeah, they've been so good behind the scenes. You don't know how much work goes into this, and they are amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. And thank you for an amazing session, Wendy and Paul. Feels like we've been on an enriching journey through the somatic and the spatial and the symbolic and the social. And perhaps we've all got a sense of what it's like touching the sweet spot as well. And I'm sure people would love to have more of it. So thank you, everybody, for coming. We really appreciate your participation. We hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.